Hi guys, how you doing? This is my second live stream via YouTube, and I just wanted to make a few comments on the recent proposal or the recent endorsement by Sharon Cuneta of Vice President Leni Robredo becoming the next president of the Republic of the Philippines. Just to say a few things. Firstly, I'm not Filipino myself. I don't live in the Philippines. However, I've been there over 60 times over 30 years. I have family there. I have also supported projects in the Philippines and consider myself to be a Filipino at heart. I also want to point out that I'm a fan of Sharon Cuneta. I have a great deal of respect for her. I have a great deal of respect for her music, and I don't have any vendetta against her. In fact, I actively support her. I think she is a national icon of the Philippines. She is a fantastic singer. She's been in many great movies that I've watched. And of course, I'd like to say publicly that I do feel very sorry that her family have had the bashing that they have or received the criticism that they have. I don't believe that culture and politics should be together. I believe culture is entirely different to politics. And I just think it's a shame as well when people are bullied and people are victimized online for their personal opinion. Regarding the Matt's daughter, Frankie, was bashed. I too feel very sad about that. And also regarding the matter where there was this issue of what clothes that people would wear, and if they were wearing certain provocative clothes, that would give men the excuse to rape them. I completely agree that people should be able to wear whatever they want. Women should be allowed to wear whatever clothes they choose to wear. Nobody should become a target just because they happen to wear clothes because they are going out to a party or to an event. You know, we live in a society where there are freedom of choice, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and there should be nobody having to dress up in a certain way just because it's the norm. However, I also believe that there should be no bashing just because of people's political views, and people should be able to express their views freely. However, on this statement by Sharon that to bring decency back to the Philippines, that somehow Leni Robredo should become president of the Philippines, I would entirely disagree. And I would entirely disagree for the following reasons. Number one, I'm firmly of the view that the president of the Philippines and the vice president of the Philippines should work together. I find it very strange that they're not of the same party. I don't know what other countries in the world have this policy, but even when we had a hung parliament in the UK, we still had the Conservative Prime Minister and we had a Deputy Prime Minister, Nick Clegg, from the Liberal Democrats. Of course, they had disagreements. Of course, they didn't agree on everything, but they found a compromise and they found a way of working together. Nick Clegg was put in charge of a certain part of policy, and the Prime Minister was put in charge of another part of the policy. And, Nick Clegg would deputize for the Prime Minister. That's what happened. They worked together in some kind of partnership. I just find it very weird where the president of the Philippines and the vice president of the Philippines are on completely separate tangents and go off to do their own thing. I find it very strange that when the vice president of the Philippines was elected to a certain position, that she should be able to deputize for the president. She's supposed to be there in terms of a national crisis, or if the president of the Philippines is incapacitated somehow, you would expect that the vice president of the Philippines would be able to take over. She would be able to fill his shoes. She would be able to attend any event in place of the president. But there is a situation in the Philippines where the vice president of the country is a leading opposition to the president. She is the opposition party. That doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. And what I also have a serious issue with is that the policies of the Philippines are for the protection of the Philippine people. So the war on drugs in the Philippines is a policy of the administration to rid the country of illegal drugs. Before President Duterte came to office, there were 4 million Filipinos addicted to illegal drugs in the Philippines. This meant that there were a massive increase in murders, in rapes, in carjackings, in all sorts of nasty, violent crimes. And then the president came about and he made sure that the drugs were at least reduced in the Philippines. He had a massive task to do. You know, this wasn't an easy task. He didn't realize the amount of people who were addicted to legal drugs in the Philippines when he became president. And yet he's cleaned up the streets. So many people tell me they feel safer. I hear so many stories from former drug addicts who tell me that they're out of that drug dependency. I've even heard documentaries where parents have said, thank goodness to President Duterte, thank goodness for what he's done, because instead of worrying about where I'm going to get my next fix of drugs, I'm looking after my children. I'm making sure my children get educated. I'm making sure my children get what they need. Instead of spending money on Shabu, parents are putting food on the tables of their children. And this is the important thing. So to say that Leni Robredo taking over as president would somehow bring decency. You know, there was a situation before where there was a video, and nobody can dispute this. There was a video where Leni Robredo went to the UN, she went to other organizations, and she made a video talking about alleged EJKs or killings in the Philippines, and somehow blaming the administration or blaming the president. You know, the fact is that the president has said very clearly that he wants a comfortable life for all Filipinos. He wants the Philippines to improve. He said very clearly, if you force my children to take drugs, I will kill you. It doesn't mean he'll literally kill people. What it means is he's discouraging criminals. He's discouraging people from getting involved in drugs to ensure that young people are growing up with a real opportunity, with a better education, with a better life. And yes, I will concede that there are occasions where the president does swear. There are occasions where the president does use foul language, but he does this out of pure frustration. He does this because he is angry that there were addicts roaming around the streets. There were addicts selling shabu in every single barangay. He was angry over the level of corruption. He was angry over the level of crime in the Philippines. Whenever President Duterte sees any kind of corruption, he immediately deals with it. He immediately sacks those who are involved in that corruption. You know, as I said, I'm a foreigner. I'm not a Filipino. It's not up to me to vote. I have no vote in the Philippines. But I can safely say over the last 4 years since President Duterte has taken office, I've spent countless hours on YouTube, on social media, reading reports, studying reports for myself. I've spent countless hours understanding what's really happening in the Philippines. You know, I haven't listened to the fake news of the opposition. I haven't listened to the fake news of the liberal Western media. I've tried to understand what's really happening in the country. I've asked people at barangay level. I've made it my business to understand what's happening. You know, there was an opportunity where Leni Robredo was invited as the counter chairperson of the drugs board of the Philippines. And, you know, the government have welcomed her involvement. The government have welcomed her suggestions, on how things can improve. Of course, I'm sure she has a lot of good ideas. I'm sure she has a lot of positive input. But instead, that, as far as I can make out, she spent those 16 or so days writing some kind of report on what was wrong and being critical. Now, I don't believe I don't believe that's the way forward. I believe the government does need support. The government does need all partners to support what's happening in the country. So now I've got to argue over this. I've got to disagree with the fact that Leni Robredo would bring decency to the Philippines, because a lot of people are against her. You only have to look at the figures. 16 million Filipinos voted for President Duterte into office. 16 million. If people wanted Leni Robredo as president, 16 million Filipinos would have voted her as vice president or into that office, but they haven't. So let's wait until the next election. Let's wait until that people have a choice. Filipinos have a choice. And of course, Sharon Cuneta is welcome to give her opinion. A lot of people respect her. I respect her entirely. And I'm very, very sorry to hear about what happened to Frankie and the social media war that took place. I don't believe that's acceptable. I don't believe anyone can make any joke out of rape, or anyone can give any scenario regarding rape. Rape is a disgusting thing. And, there's no excuse. You can't use a rape argument within politics. And I'm sorry that happened. And I'm deeply sorry. And I'm also deeply sorry to hear that the bashing that Sharon has got. And I'm an independent person. I'm entitled to my own opinion. I'm entitled to my own views. And I have always tried, to keep politics separate from culture. I'm a massive supporter of culture. I'm a massive supporter of Filipino music, of OPM music. And of course, I've said this once and I'll say this again. I do have respect for Sharon Cuneta. I do have respect for her family. That there's no doubt about that. So if she's watching this, or if she gets to watch this, I'm sorry what's happened to her. And of course, you are entitled to your own public opinion. But as for me, I do not believe that Leni Robredo would bring decency to the Philippines. Maybe there's time for change. Maybe she can suddenly improve. Maybe she can suddenly work with the president. Maybe Leni Robredo would go to the president and say, actually, can you give me a position? I'd like to be involved with this project or that project. And, they've said many times, the Presidential Communications Operations Office and spokesperson Harry Roque, as well as his predecessor, have said many times, we listen to Leni Robredo, we listen to her views, we welcome her views. If you work together, I believe there is power in working together. The more minds that you put together, the better the situation is. But I find it very, very strange that the vice president of the Philippines is opposing the president of the Philippines, when the vice president of the Philippines would actually one day, I hope this never happens, but, potentially one day, God forbid, if the president became sick, you would assume that the vice president of the Philippines would take over. But I don't believe that she has the ability to do that. I don't believe that's in the national interests, which is why whenever President Duterte does take some time out, he doesn't appoint her. He appoints other people to that position. Anyway, I'm sending my best wishes again to Sharon and to her family. And, that's my opinion. And I hope I don't get bashed too much. And as I've said, as for decency, I believe President Duterte has brought decency to the Philippines. I believe he's really OFWs around the world feel proud of the president. OFWs around the world consider President Duterte as a father, as their tatay digong, because he genuinely cares about the country. He genuinely cares about the Filipino people. And this is the thing, I've never seen such a positive reaction for a Philippine president. You know, there were many parties around the UK, around other parts of the world when President Duterte came into office, because people were generally excited. People were very happy that finally there was a president who wanted real change. Finally, there was a president who was against corruption, against drugs. You know, there was a president finally who was from Mindanao, who supported the people of Mindanao and wanted a better Philippines, improvements in infrastructure, improvements in the country. You know, I was lucky enough or fortunate enough to have been invited to the Build conference in the Conrad Hotel in Manila, going back a couple of years ago. And I saw for myself the projects of the president. I saw for myself his wishes to try and improve infrastructure and make the Philippines great again. You know, the president has 2 years left in office as president. And I'd like to send him my very best wishes. I'd like to thank him for everything he's doing for the Philippines, for everything he's doing for my family. You know, there have been so many improvements. The passport has now been made 10 years as opposed to 5 years, which meant it's easier for OFWs to get a passport and to go abroad. You know, the Philippines has shot up in terms of their on the world stage. You know, there's a much better economy, a much better situation in the country. Yes, of course, there are difficulties during the COVID-19 pandemic. And no doubt this has put the Philippines into more debt. But that's not the president's fault. What would you want the people to do? Would you want the Philippines to starve because the president won't borrow any more money? No, as far as I'm concerned, the president was entirely right to borrow more because he needed to ensure that Filipinos didn't go hungry. You know, everything he does is for the benefit of the Filipino people. And ask the 16 million, but you don't need to ask the 16 million. You only need to look at surveys that give the president a popularity rating of more than 80%. You find me another world leader anywhere in the world that has such a popularity rating, a good or satisfied or very good rating. You find me one. You know, I think the Filipinos are sick and tired of corruption. The Filipinos are sick and tired of all of this political masterminding, if you like. But right now, the Philippines, I believe, is happy. Yes, there are people who don't agree with the president. I accept that. But the fact is, 16 million voters voted for him. And I believe the Philippines is going in the right direction. And I hope that people would allow me to have my own opinion, as I also respect other people's opinion. Anyway, best wishes. Thanks for watching. Mabuhay Philippines.